Mission of the 12th of April, 1945. The Oka. Attack on destroyer. USS Mannert L. Abele. On the 12th of April, 1945, 9 Mitsubishi G-4M Betty bombers and their escort of A-6M0 fighters flew over the cold waters of the East China Sea. In the lead aircraft, Lieutenant Saburo Dohi, assigned as pilot of the top-secret Oka weapon, silently fastened his oxygen mask and lay down on an improvised cot inside the cramped fuselage. His thoughts were focused only on one thing, the weapon in the bomb bay that the Japanese hoped could change the course of the war. Beside him sat the radio operator, Lieutenant Zenji Sugano. He tapped Saburo lightly on the shoulder. "We've found them," he said quietly. "American ships ahead. American ships. American ships." Below, 2 destroyers and several smaller vessels appeared. The Bettys moved into attack, and almost immediately, enemy anti-aircraft fire struck at them. The crew rushed to battle stations. It was clear. If the Americans had not yet detected them on radar, they would within minutes. Time was running out soon. Heavy Allied aircraft would arrive. Saburo approached the hatch in the bomb bay. The one pilots had nicknamed the Devil's Gate. He stopped beside Sugano. "Petty Officer Sugano, thank you for everything," he said. For a brief moment there was calm, deep understanding, respect between 2 men who had already accepted their fate. Sugano raised his hand in salute, and Saburo smiled in reply before descending into the hatch. When the bomb bay doors opened, wind struck Saburo's face. He carefully climbed into the cramped cockpit of the Oka, a small, manned missile slung beneath the bomber's fuselage. Through a narrow slit he could see the chaos of battle below. 3 kamikazes attacked the American destroyer, USS Mannert L. Abele. The ship's gunners fought desperately. 1 was shot down, another driven off, but the third broke through the fire and slammed into the ship's side. Seconds later, an explosion thundered. The bomb carried by the plane pierced the deck and detonated inside. Above, Saburo prepared for release of the Oka. He sent a Morse message, waiting for the drop mechanism. But minute after minute passed, and nothing happened. Cold fear rose inside him. If the Betty flew too far, Saburo would lose sight of his target. At that moment, a malfunction struck the bomber. The explosive lock failed. Sugano, risking his life, was ordered to release the Oka manually. Closing his eyes, he pulled the lever. Without warning, Saburo dropped away. Air roared around him. It felt as if the earth was tearing upward to meet him. Summoning all his will, Saburo followed his training. He activated the power unit on the panel, pressed the button on the joystick, and the Oka came alive. A deafening, unnatural howl burst forth like the cry of mythical thunder gods. The force of the boosters pinned Saburo to the seatback. Speed rose so fast he could barely breathe. On the sea's surface, the crew of USS Mannert L. Abele saw a small, incredibly fast object flying low over the waves. None aboard had ever seen anything like it. They had no second to react. The Oka, guided by Saburo, sliced through the air and struck the destroyer's starboard side. The moment of impact became a blinding explosion. The 2,600-pound warhead obliterated the ship's midsection, warped the keel, and knocked out all electronics. Water poured in, compartments flooding one after another. Men on the lower decks never even understood what had happened. According to Sugano, who watched the Oka's descent from above, Saburo did it. His attack was fatal. The destroyer split in 2. Bow and stern slowly drifted apart and sank, carrying dozens of sailors trapped inside. As stunned survivors clung to the water, a new threat approached. A second Oka. The destroyer, USS Jeffers, opened fire. The pilot sought to repeat Saburo's feat, but at only 50 yards, a shell struck the Oka. It exploded in midair, destroying the craft and its pilot, before reaching the target. Saburo's first attack and the subsequent bombardment killed 83 American sailors and wounded 35. His strike became the only successful sinking of a ship by Oka in the entire war. Saburo Dohi would never know that his sacrifice was not directed at an aircraft carrier, as his commander had told him, but at a small radar picket destroyer, a ship on the fleet's periphery. After the prolonged battles in the Pacific, Japan was rapidly losing ground. American aircraft carriers were drawing ever closer, and the outcome of the war was becoming increasingly obvious. It was at this time that the Navy headquarters conceived a desperate plan to create a new, unprecedented weapon that might restore strategic initiative to the Japanese Empire. The project received the codename Oka Cherry Blossom. Later, the Allies would give it another name, Baka, Fool. In the spring of 1944, at the Chiyoda Naval Base, pilots were selected for a secret unit. The selection was unusual. They did not want the best aces, but the most disciplined, psychologically stable, and absolutely loyal soldiers. Among hundreds of candidates, 2 stood out: Saburo Dohi, diplomatic, calm, and thoughtful, and Hideo Yamashita, straightforward, stubborn, and hot-tempered. They were not friends, but from the first day, a rivalry arose between them, resembling a brotherly competition. When the future pilots were gathered in a hangar, the group's commander, Captain Aichi Iwakami, stood before them with a stony face. Behind him, covered with canvas, was a strange silhouette, low, rounded, almost like a child's toy, yet disturbing. "From this moment," Iwakami said, "you listen only to me. What you are about to see is a state secret." He tore off the canvas. Before the pilots lay a small aircraft without landing gear and without a visible engine. Its tiny wings gleamed with dark blue paint, and in the nose was a large air intake. "This is the MXY-7 Oka," Iwakami said. "Your weapon." No one spoke. The men exchanged glances, trying to understand what they were seeing. The commander continued. "This is not an airplane. It is a guided missile. It carries 1,200 kilograms of explosives and flies faster than any enemy fighter. You are its heart." The silence became almost tangible. Everyone understood the meaning of his words. There was no way back. The 721st Group was stationed at the Yokosuka Air Base, where training began. First came theory, the structure of the weapon, aerodynamics, the principles of solid fuel boosters and oxygen systems. Then came psychological training, long lectures on duty, honor, and the inevitability of sacrifice. Hideo treated the training as a challenge. "If this is our path," he said, "then we will walk it better than anyone." Saburo, by contrast, was quieter and more reflective. He asked mechanics questions, discussed cockpit details with engineers, studied every switch. It was as if he sought to understand not only the controls, but the meaning of everything happening. Gradually, a complex bond grew between the 2 pilots. Hideo respected Saburo's calmness. Saburo respected Hideo's bluntness. They trained on simulators, flew light training aircraft, practiced emergency procedures, though everyone knew they would never be usable in combat. One evening, Iwakami brought the group into a separate hangar. Along the walls stood models of aircraft carriers and destroyers. "From this moment, you will practice your one and only flight," he said. It sounded both grand and terrifying. The instructions were simple. The Betty bomber carries the Oka to altitude. The pilot transfers into the cockpit. The mechanism releases the missile. Boosters ignite. The trajectory is corrected manually. Impact the final point. "Mistakes are unacceptable," Iwakami repeated. "There will be no second attempts." Against the backdrop of harsh training, the relationship between Saburo and Hideo came to resemble that of 2 brothers doomed to the same path. Hideo sometimes joked about Saburo's excessive seriousness. If you memorize everything like that, you'll probably be reading instructions, even in your last moment." Saburo smiled. If instructions help me hit the target, then why not? But beneath the jokes lay truth. Both fully understood what they were preparing for. Sometimes at night, Saburo would walk out onto the concrete apron and gaze at the sea. Hideo would find him and ask, "Still thinking?" "I'm thinking about what will follow all of this," Saburo replied. "And I'm thinking that we must be better than anyone. In some way, this war must be honest." They both knew. It had not been honest for a long time. When the training grew exhausting, one of the young pilots jokingly called himself and his comrades KAMIKAZE, a play on words. But the mechanics gave them another name, Raigami, thunder gods, because their weapon roared like a storm, and the strike of the Oka had the force of lightning. The 721st Group received its official designation, Special Attack Unit of Naval Aviation. Sometimes Iwakami held personal conversations with the pilots. Of Saburo, he said, "He has a heart that does not yield to fear. He understands too much. He will be the perfect pilot." Saburo. Of Hideo. "This one burns himself out inside. He will make his flight before anyone else." And indeed, Hideo's turn came first. He said farewell to Saburo the day before his mission, handed him his written prayer, and said, "You're next, but you'll do it better than me." Hideo took off and died attempting to attack ships off Okinawa. His plane was shot down before the Oka could be released. Nothing was found but wreckage. Saburo was silent for a long time after his death. No one knew what he thought, but everyone understood. Whatever he felt, he would not turn back. In early April came the order to prepare for a major operation. On the map, they were shown the sector where the American fleet was advancing toward Okinawa. Saburo Dohi was among those chosen for the first strike group. His path to the final flight had begun. That morning, snow lay on the runway in a thin silver layer, as if time itself were trying to cover the traces of human decisions. Hideo Kinoshita stood by the wing of his aircraft, stroking the cold metal as though he could pass some of his calm into it. He thought of Saburo, of how, a month earlier, they had laughed together by the fire, arguing over who would hit the training target first, of how his friend's fate had hung on the final meters of his life, bound to the steel pylon of the Oka. It seemed strange to him that life went on, pilots cleaning their weapons, mechanics cursing over tools, officers once again drilling men on the parade ground. And somewhere beneath the water, in the black depths of the ocean, lay Saburo Dohi, not a hero of the empire, not a line in a combat report, but a man who once played baseball, handed pears from his tree to neighborhood children, and dreamed of learning photography. Hideo increasingly found himself gazing at the sky, trying to imagine what Saburo had seen in his final second. A flash, the water, or perhaps that feeling of release the Oka pilots sometimes spoke of. The commander of the 721st Unit announced a new mission. Hideo listened, but his thoughts flowed elsewhere. He was not against the war, that was how he had been taught. But for the first time, he began to understand the cost of orders. Not the cost to the state, but the cost to the men whose names would never be spoken at parades. When the day of the flight came, Hideo felt no fear, only weight. He approached his booster, laid his hand on the fuselage of the Oka, and in that moment, understood. It did not matter whether he returned or not. What mattered was what they left behind. Not a legend of fearlessness, but a lesson. Takeoff was smooth. Dawn melted beneath the wings. Hideo tried to hold Saburo's face in memory, so as not to dissolve into the mechanics of yet another mission. When they reached the separation line, he switched off the radio for a few seconds and whispered, "Saburo, I remember." That memory was his only rebellion, and his only way to remain human in a war that gave frighteningly little space to humanity. The story of Saburo Dohi and Hideo Kinoshita is not a tale of glorifying war. It is an attempt to name the people lost between the lines of textbooks. The Oka did not become a weapon of victory, but it became a reminder. Any technology, any order, any flag becomes empty if the human faces behind it are forgotten. Today, decades later, we can afford the luxury not to judge, but to understand. To understand that bravery belongs not only to those who died, and that the world we live in is built not on machines and strategies, but on the fates of ordinary people whose stories are rarely heard aloud. Thank you for reading this story. If you enjoyed it, subscribe, because ahead lie many more stories where the past comes alive and forgotten voices speak again.